Our guests today are Jamie Carroll Smith and Chuck Seets. Jamie is Associate Director for EY Center for Board Matters. She's in Denver. Chuck is EY America's Assurance Cybersecurity Leader. He's in Atlanta. Chuck coordinates a profession-wide, auditor-wide effort working through the Center for Audit Quality to elevate engagement on cybersecurity. I'm Brock Romanek, today on Zippy Point. So Jamie and Chuck, cyber-readiness in the board. It's just a huge issue. It's a huge issue. Chuck, what are the biggest concerns that directors voiced at your latest Director Cyber Summit?
There are a lot of things they're concerned about, Brock. Perhaps one of the most challenging ones is that this is an issue that most directors did not grow up dealing with. If you look at the backgrounds of most directors, most did not come out of formerly being the head of IT or being a chief information security officer. So while they appreciate the risk and they can certainly deal with it as executives and accomplished board members, it's not a subject matter that they're personally or intimately familiar with. So, trying to get their heads around it, understand the vernacular, understand the motivations of bad actors and the types of bad actors that are out there in the world. Also, the pace of change with which things are changing. We all reference digital applications and the explosion of the use of digital applications. And that's not going to slow down, and it's happening faster and faster. And so how you stay on top of such a fast-moving train as a director is probably one of the more challenging things that they're having to deal with.
And then where do the risks of cyber breaches seem to rank in the list of the biggest concerns that directors have today?
I would generalize absolutely top three. In many folks' minds, it's the top risk. But that really depends on your perspective and perhaps the sector of the economy that the company on whose board you sit, where they play. But it's almost always in just about every research publication, whether it's our own or others, would put cybersecurity in the top three. And it's understandable why. It's hard to really run a business these days without being connected to the internet. And if you're connected to the internet, by default, you have cybersecurity risk. So if you can imagine a company that doesn't use the internet, you could probably get a get out of jail free card. But if they're connected to the internet, there's some degree of risk.
The other vid guide that we made together about cybersecurity disclosures, we talked briefly about there's a certification process out there for directors. What can directors do to prepare them to be able to assess a company's cyber readiness?
There's a couple of things they can do. First of all, I think most directors have a natural curiosity. So I would encourage them to pursue that, whether that's working through organizations like the NACD and countless others, or working through the profession, inquiring with their audit firm and other advisors. There's plenty of places that can provide perspective and insights to rely upon. And we do an awful lot of that at Ernst & Young. So many directors avail themselves of that. Another thing that directors often do is then they also wish to seek some heightened degree of comfort. There's no one that can guarantee you that you will not get breached. That just isn't out there. But what they look for is a comfort that as a director, the company is doing everything that's reasonable that would allow the company to identify or detect so that they can protect the company from said breach, or if they do have a breach, that they can respond and recover effectively. So directors are turning to those in the profession, notably in the accounting and auditing profession, and they start by looking for organizations that come in and do third-party assessments, which oftentimes on the simplest scale are inquiry-only type assessments, and then they graduate from there. They may seek somebody to come in and do an assessment that will do inquiry of the management team, but also some level of verification of what they've heard, some degree of testing that authenticates that everything they heard is in fact in place and operating effectively. Then on the further end of the spectrum, where they look for the most assurance, is some organizations are now contemplating the value of getting a third-party attestation report from their accounting and auditing provider. And in that report, it provides an opinion of the audit firm as to the effectiveness of a company's cyber risk management program. and gets into evaluating the controls around that program, which gives most directors the most amount of comfort that they can possibly get. But that's quite challenging to achieve, especially given the constant fluidity of the deployment of digital assets in corporate America.
So Chuck, what role does EY play with its clients when it comes to cyber readiness?
We play a lot of different roles. There are a tremendous amount of permissible services for any audit firm to be able to deliver to their audit clients. So let me offer just a few to start with. We do assessments for many of our audit clients. Either the management team and or the board will engage us to come in and assess the effectiveness of the company's cyber risk management program. We may assess the entirety of the program, or we may assess a piece of it. Perhaps it's geographic, or perhaps it's a piece of the organization, but we will assess it starting with inquiry of the management team. And then some boards ask us to become even more attentive to the assessment and not only do an inquiry-based assessment, but also to verify what we heard and go in and authenticate the level of controls or the information that was provided and test to make sure that that information is indeed accurate. So that's on the shorter end of the spectrum. On the highest end of the spectrum, or the most rigorous end of the spectrum, I should say, is third-party attestation reports. Many folks may not be aware, but the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants about 3 years ago released a framework which would allow an audit firm to come in and provide the board with a third-party attestation report, i.e. an opinion on the effectiveness of a company's cyber risk management program. That opinion would be analogous to the financial statement opinion that we provide on the financial statements coming from the auditing profession, or similar to the opinion that we provide on the internal controls around those financial statements. So that's probably the most aggressive end of the spectrum. Beyond those two, the assessments and attestation reports, we get asked frequently to provide insight sessions to the board. Oftentimes we'll get asked to lead either the management team and or the board through cyber breach simulation exercises. Another area where we're being asked to get involved is in doing due diligence on M&A activity. If a company is looking to acquire another company, if they engage us, they'll ask us to not only look over the financial statements and the balance sheet of the company or the target, but also to do an assessment of the company's risks around cybersecurity, because time has proven that you can acquire a major problem if you're not careful. Another area we're being engaged is to review the efficacy of the company's cyber insurance regime to make sure that if in fact they suffer a breach and they have to take advantage of whatever insurance they have in place, that the insurance coverages are written in such a way that the company will be able to rely upon it. So we can do those sorts of assessments, or if a company has a breach and has to pursue filing a claim, then that is also a permissible service. We're able to work alongside the company to help them build their claim to submit to their insurer.
And for those companies that haven't taken advantage yet of an independent third-party verifier, is it because it's only been 3 years, it's pretty new since the ICPA acted, or cost, or just lack of knowledge?
It's a combination of factors. Part of it is awareness, and that's why we're participating in this video with you today. The other part of it is absolutely cost. And there's a third dynamic, which is rather unique. It's sort of nuanced. Most companies that have suffered a major breach, who would be desirous of having somebody come in and give them a good housekeeping seal of approval, those companies are challenging to remediate themselves. So they're spending a lot of time and energy and precious capital to help remediate all the issues that were uncovered as a byproduct of the breach. So while they may wish to have such an attestation report, the practical reality is that they're in the throes of remediating so many different things that to have somebody come in and audit it would basically be impractical at this juncture. So there's a timing issue that has to be factored in as well. But we are seeing more and more companies that are starting to grow interested in getting this kind of report proactively, simply because of the velocity and the magnitude of some of the breaches that we're all reading about in the press each and every day.
So let's bring in our cybersecurity disclosure expert, Jamie. What are the questions, top questions you think directors that should be asking management about the company's cyber readiness?
Sure. Well, given the value of disclosures as an engagement tool and a way to build stakeholder trust, we think boards really need to challenge management on whether the disclosures are effectively communicating the rigor of the company's cybersecurity risk management program and the role the board is playing in overseeing it. And then a second I would put forward, and this is a question for the board itself, not for management. But one thing we say a lot at the Center for Board Matters is that a way for the board to set the tone at the top for a particular issue is really to prioritize it on the board agenda and focus on it and spend time on it. So we think boards should be asking themselves, are we allocating sufficient time to cybersecurity and data privacy on the agenda? And is our committee structure appropriate to create effective oversight?
Thank you so much, Jamie and Chuck. Very informative, and hopefully the world will continue to be safe. This is as bad as my last.